There are moments in life when silence weighs more than noise, when the body feels tired and the mind is lost between the desire to change and the fear of beginning again. It's in that instant, when everything seems to slip out of control, that discipline reveals itself, not as a prison, but as the key to true freedom. Because freedom is not born from impulse, but from the clarity that arises when we learn to master ourselves. But what is discipline after all? Is it a punishment imposed by a world that demands too much, or is it a silent form of self-love? And if it's love, why does it hurt so often? The answer lies in understanding that discipline isn't about restriction, it's about direction. It isn't the weight of obligation, but the strength of choosing to continue even when no one is watching. To be disciplined is not to obey, but to understand. Because those who know their purpose don't need noise, they only need presence. It's fascinating how, in a world obsessed with instant rewards, the simple act of staying firm becomes an act of rebellion. Most people quit when the path stops being pleasant, when pleasure fades and discomfort appears. But it's precisely at that point where willpower trembles that the spirit begins to forge itself. Discipline is the art of crossing discomfort without being lost in it. It's the ability to act without depending on fleeting emotions. And the more you practice, the more you see that discipline doesn't limit, it liberates. The ancient monks knew this well. They rose before dawn, not because anyone forced them, but because every gesture, sweeping the floor, boiling water, breathing in silence, was part of their inner training. They understood that an undisciplined mind is like a wild horse. It runs in every direction and reaches nowhere. A trained spirit, however, learns to walk peacefully even amid the storm. The secret is not to eliminate chaos, but to remain still within it. So, if this message resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to regain focus. Leave a like, subscribe, and send this video to those lost in haste and distraction. Stay with us until the end. To be disciplined is not to harden, but to become light. It's acting with firmness without losing gentleness. In the Buddhist path, discipline is seen as an act of compassion toward oneself, a way of caring, born from the genuine desire to no longer lose yourself. When you commit to something greater than your impulses, you're actually freeing yourself from the invisible chains of doubt and indecision. True slavery is being led by every emotion. True freedom is choosing your direction consciously, even when your heart hesitates. Most people believe freedom is doing whatever they want. But what happens when what you want destroys you? When momentary pleasure sabotages lasting peace? Discipline is the antidote to that cycle. It doesn't deny pleasure, it simply puts it in its rightful place. It teaches that everything has its time, and without structure, even love gets lost. In practice, discipline is simple but rare. It's eating when it's time to eat, working when it's time to work, resting when it's time to rest. It's being fully present in every act without escaping, without wishing to be elsewhere. That's the real training, learning to be. The modern mind constantly seeks the new, leaping from one stimulus to another, unable to stay still. But when you begin to observe yourself, you see that the real confusion isn't outside, it's within. The external world merely mirrors the mind's lack of discipline. In a monastery, a novice once asked his master, "Why do we repeat the same tasks every day? Isn't that a waste of time?" The master replied, "Repetition is the path from thought to wisdom." And so it is beyond the temples too. Every small routine you keep with awareness is a brick in the foundation of serenity. The problem is that we confuse repetition with monotony, when in truth, it is the base of invisible progress. The spirit matures through the ordinary. Discipline is not the enemy of spontaneity, it's the soil from which true spontaneity blooms. Without discipline, impulse becomes escape. With discipline, impulse becomes expression. A disciplined person doesn't need to be cold, only awake. because they understand that to act consciously is the highest form of freedom. Some run from routine as if it were a prison, but those who live without purpose become prisoners of their own chaos. The undisciplined mind builds labyrinths and gets lost in them. The trained mind builds paths and walks them with serenity. What separates the two is not talent or luck, but consistency. What you do every day builds your destiny, light or heavy. In ancient times, it was said that the enlightened warrior doesn't win by strength, but by patience. He doesn't strike out of impulse, he waits for the right moment. And when he acts, he does so with full presence. That is the essence of discipline, knowing when to move and when to stay still. The world confuses haste with progress, but true growth is silent. It's the transformation that happens within, unseen, as you repeat what must be done day after day until the action becomes part of who you are. Yet this path isn't easy. There will be days when your will disappears, when your mind questions the point of continuing. In those moments, discipline becomes your best ally. Because it doesn't depend on motivation, it depends on decision. Motivation shifts with emotion. Discipline remains even when nothing makes sense. It's what keeps the flame alive when enthusiasm fades. Many seek freedom by escaping rules, not realizing they're only trading one form of prison for another. Escaping discipline means falling under desire's rule. And desire, when left unchecked, always demands more consuming without ever being satisfied. Freedom isn't doing everything you want. It's not being controlled by what you want. That's the difference between living awake and living on autopilot. With time, something changes. What once felt like sacrifice begins to feel like peace. The simple act of keeping your word to yourself becomes a source of quiet joy. You stop depending on the world to feel whole. A disciplined mind finds rest in action. Work, study, meditation all become expressions of balance. You no longer fight against yourself, you flow. And that flow isn't passivity, it's mastery. The Zen master used to say, don't chase results, seek presence. Results come when you no longer need them. That is the essence of compassionate discipline. Acting without anxiety, practicing without applause. When your intention is pure, the effort itself becomes the reward. Modern life has taught us to associate discipline with pain, but the ancients knew it was the path to clarity. It's the training that frees us from mental noise, from the impulses that enslave us, from the fears that paralyze us. When you act with consistency, something silent awakens confidence. The confidence of knowing that no matter what happens, you can rely on yourself. And that self-trust is the beginning of true freedom. A trained mind no longer needs constant supervision. It becomes naturally calm, like a lake that after much wind finally reflects the sky without distortion. That is the power of discipline, to turn chaos into clarity, effort into harmony, control into understanding. And if you've made it this far, it means something within you is seeking that stillness. Perhaps you're tired of quick promises, of changes that don't last, of roads that start with excitement and end in emptiness. Discipline is the remedy for that fatigue. It doesn't offer miracles, but it offers stability. And where there is stability, the mind finds rest. So before we close, remember, discipline doesn't demand perfection, it only asks for presence. Even when everything falls apart, the simple act of continuing, of rising, breathing, and doing what must be done is already victory. That's how discouragement is defeated, through small, daily acts of quiet courage. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to regain focus. Leave a like, subscribe, and send this to someone wandering through haste and distraction. Maybe your words will help them realize that the freedom they seek isn't out there, it's within. And it begins with one simple act: discipline. Because in the end, true freedom isn't the destination. It's the way you choose to walk the path with awareness, consistency, and peace.